So anyway, thank you so much for coming on this chat with me today. Do you want to introduce yourself, Stella?
Yes, so I'm Stella Duffy. I'm the co-director and co-founder of Fun Palaces. In my other life, I'm a novelist and theatre director, but for about the past 7 years, Fun Palaces has pretty much taken over. Fun Palaces, as an organisation, we have a staff of nearly 9. We are all part-time and we're all across the UK. And we support local communities to co-create the community cultural events that they want to. So it's never about flying in artists or leaders to lead it for them. We very much believe that every community has within it the most amazing people who, just given the opportunity, will shine. And so at a Fun Palace, people do all sorts of things. So they might teach each other whittling, or they might teach each other dance or yoga, or some important mental health or physical health things that they want to share. And each Fun Palace might have 3 activities or 20 or 60 all on in the same space at the same time, or staggered throughout the day. And that means that you might get somebody who thinks, oh, I'm going to go because my nana's teaching her famous yodeling workshop. But actually, they then go, oh, look, like you guys were last year, there's an osteopath team over there, and I didn't even know they were in my community, and they're running a workshop about something that I really need to know. So it's a kind of free-for-all, community-led, really often messy and chaotic, sometimes lasts 3 hours, sometimes lasts the whole day. It's an annual event, but it's never really about the event. It's about the work that people do leading up to it. So they get to know each other. Totally. And they get to know each other in the lead up. It might take 6 months, it might take 6 weeks to plan, but it's that community connection. And every year we see that the Fun Palace people make the year after builds on the one they did before.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I know, obviously, as you were mentioning, that we, in fact, did participate last year for the first time. And as osteopaths, we work out of a library setting, and actually decided to participate within the library on a Fun Palace Saturday, I think we chose in the end. And it was great because actually the Mayor of Westminster came along and said hello to us, and that was great as well. And it was interesting setting it up, because we did something actually on walking better as a concept, because we thought that it was a lot of people are interested in walking as a general health thing.
Most people walk, right? So when I heard that you guys were doing this, I was really excited, because sometimes when people want to run something at a Fun Palace, it's almost like they aim too high. Like they want to share everything they do in a 20-minute workshop. And ideally at a Fun Palace, you repeat the same thing 2 or 3 times in case someone comes in the morning, goes out to the market, and then says to their mate, oh, you want to go to see those guys? And so then they come back, and, be a shame if you've gone. So when I heard that you were doing something about walking, we were really excited, because that's just a great way in. Now, I know not everyone walks, but most people, a large percentage of our population, is at least able to walk a little bit. So everyone understands walking as a kind of thing that most people, unless you're disabled and in a wheelchair, can do.
Indeed. And we were looking at all ages. We had an amazing range of ages. Internationally, people from all over the place turned up, and we actually looked at really walking better, looking at their balance, looking at their coordination, and we were teaching them skills and awareness to improve their gait, to improve the way they step, basically, to make it more efficient. And in fact, we drew and had quite a graphic way of looking at this. And I think, so it's something I'd like to certainly do again and explore further. I think it's a skill now that people are kind of looking at, because it's taken for granted actually on some levels, because it's kind of simple, but actually there are ways in to make it more useful and more healthy.
And so, did you find that it linked you with people in the community you wouldn't have been linked with before?
Absolutely. We didn't know any of the people that we had not met any of those people before in the context of our osteopathy. And in fact, we are library users as a family, in fact, anyway, fairly heavily. But in fact, these people were completely a different range of people, and they all interacted actually during the sessions. And as you say, people drop in at all different times. So it couldn't be done as a sort of set piece where it begins at a certain time and ends. It had to be a rolling show, if you like.
And that's something we have to explain to people about Fun Palaces. So if they have a standard workshop that they're used to delivering, it can work, but it's not ideal. What's ideal is something that you can repeat that's 10, 20 minutes long, maybe, that it's okay for someone to watch or join in, because not everyone wants to join in. But
Indeed.
some people get a massive amount of value out of watching someone else if they just don't have the courage themselves to join in.
I
And
think
the other
that's very
thing
wise.
about a fun palace is it always attracts people who think they're coming for one thing, or they're just coming to support. I don't know, your friends are coming to support you because you're running something there, and then they discover there's something else on at the Fun Palace that they didn't know they were interested in. So you get this kind of cross-community fertilization that's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
exciting.
I think what you said about observing is interesting, because in health terms and public health, communicating messaging is actually very often focused on a particular target audience. But
Yes.
the chance of watching someone else participating and learning,
Yeah.
it might even entice them to have a go. And we found people who were sitting around watching and intrigued suddenly actually said, I will have a go.
That's
So,
brilliant.
so that was very interesting
Yeah.
to get that participation for us, because it is expanding in a sense what we're offering and talking about to a different audience and a wider audience. So that's and the group dynamic was there as well. That was the other thing.
Absolutely, and that makes such a difference as well to, I think, the connections that last afterwards. So when people take part, they have a very different, almost visceral sense of what it was like to do, and therefore they maintain that connection in a different way afterwards than when they're just lectured at or just talked at. And there's also something else there that I think is really important. So a lot of fun palaces have always done stuff around mental health, because a lot of arts work happens at fun palaces, a lot of craft, a lot of creativity, because they're nice skills for people to share. And we're also saying to people, you don't have to share a skill that you're the best at. You're welcome to. I mean, if you happen to be the best clog dancer in Britain or anywhere, because with 15 different nations across the world have taken part in fun palaces, you can share that skill. But if you just happen to be passionate about something, whether it's your job or not, that's also a great skill to share. Because when we share a skill, we have a different conversation with people. And that's what you're saying about people having conversations within the workshop itself. So they then get to have a different feeling about the thing. And I think they often come away with a more emotional connection with what they've done. And in terms of physical health, I think that's huge. Having an emotional connection to our physical health that is positive, rather than merely perceiving our physical health as showing up when something goes wrong, is so important.
Well, I think establishing the context where people are self-caring and feel motivated to do it is another whole matter, because you can offer lots of ideas on rehabilitation and other structures that people ought to be doing or should be doing, but actually defining the want to be doing, the actual motivation that gets to them and makes them participate is really critical in healthcare, because it's getting the motivation that is king, really, to create change in people's attitude to their health.
And I think the place where we are now, so you and I are recording this in May 2020, we're both aware of the big need for rehab that's going to come for people who've experienced the COVID virus badly, as opposed to just the small bit. And even the small bits do seem to have some lingering effects. And I think that there is a place for fun palaces this year because they're led by all sorts of different groups, and they might be led by a community group, they might be led by a library group, they might be led by a museum, they might be led just by a group of teenagers or a group of 65 pluses. It's all different groups who lead them, and often more than one group at a time. But as community services, we could now be thinking, how can we support the people leading fun palaces to be aware that some of the people coming along might need to know about some rehab things that are going on in their town or their village or their city that they didn't know before.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's also, it's kind of a side way in to kind of getting people interested in areas of health and well-being that they perhaps hadn't considered before.
Totally.
And I think that messaging, there's an awful lot of messaging, as we know now, coming out from government, on TV, on paper, in print, on social media. But it's kind of telling us what to do or what we have to do or should do, rather than actually encouraging us. Obviously, in a crisis, it's slightly different. But even then, as a model of future care, so going beyond the crisis and taking forward this model of getting to the communities and deeper into communities, I think it's changing the mindset for the future, full stop, not just the now.
And one of the things that I think we've all discovered within the crisis is that much as central government has an important role, local government and local community is where the key work has to happen. Because we've had to take care of ourselves with, the huge swathe of WhatsApp local groups that have just grown up, the local mutual aid groups, where people who may never have volunteered before have absolutely stepped up. And I think that what's going to come out of the crisis is more of a spotlight shone on those people. And we've always worked with them in Fun Palaces, but they've hardly ever been trumpeted. And, you know, the kind of person who volunteers at their, I don't know, local food bank every week, who does it all the time and never gets really noticed. I think those people have absolutely come into their own now because they've had to. Because
they've become leaders. I mean, the thing is,
exactly.
There's this whole thing about leadership only being for certain people. And there's a lot of conversation in healthcare as well. I actually coach undergraduate health leaders for the Council of Deans program, which is a very innovative program. And actually, the realization is that if you go into certain fields, okay, perhaps there hadn't been an expectation, but actually you have to lead in your role. And indeed, anybody who's helping in their community in any way at all, in a small way or a big way, it doesn't matter how, they are leading their community. They're acting, you know, as a leader, and they may not even realize they did it. I mean, that's the best way, actually. It's not becoming...
It often is, because if we ask people to sign up to lead, it's often scary.
Yeah.
When people lead anyway, because they're passionate about something, that's how come they end up being leaders. But then they're the best people to lead because they've got the local knowledge and they've got the community connections. And they're the ones who often show up at a Fun Palace, and they may not be sharing a skill, but they're making all the cups of tea. And they've got the rota, and they know who's doing something at 10:10, and then somebody says, I want to do that again, and they know that it's happening at 3:20 somewhere else. You know, they're the ones with all the knowledge, and they're the ones who have really, they've stepped up so brilliantly in this crisis. And I think those people are the ones who are going to be key in future, and they're across the board. They're all ages. They are all demographics, and they are absolutely all jobs as well, and no jobs. You know, they're just showing up.
Yeah. Well, can I just speak a little bit about COGUK UK, the project, just a little bit to share, because the concept behind that is actually linking professionals and communities very much. And so within the concept even of Fun Palaces, that there is a potential maybe there to get groups of professionals to prepare, put together and contemplate how they may contribute to their community and actually stimulate what's been happening with Fun Palaces anyway, but to actually get people to become, I say train the trainers, but it's actually getting people in community who share and participate to pass on those messages to deeper into their community on healthcare or anything else. Health and wellbeing is one example, but to kind of stimulate a wave of change.
Totally, and what we've seen, so this is our 7th year, 2020, we had our first annual weekend in 2014. And what we've seen is that stuff shows up, and it shows up around whatever else is going on in the world. So the last few years, we've had a lot of stuff where mental health issues have showed up, and that's fantastic and really important. I suspect this year that we're going to see more physical health and that crossover with mental health showing up. And that's really exciting to me, because where physical health and mental health crossover is where we either have a really damaged society or a phenomenal society. And where everyone feels personally responsible, not just for their own physical and mental health, but for that of their neighbours. And that's what Fun Palaces is very much about. It's about really light touch. How can we support people to feel like leaders in their own communities, that what they have to say counts and what they care about matters? And how can we do that? By mostly we stand back. We do a lot of workshops and leadership skills around, I don't even say empowering, because empowering sounds too top down. I say compowering. Com means with. So powering them to power themselves. It's exactly the same thing. I'm not leading it. They're leading themselves.
Well, certainly, that's, I mean, in rehabilitation terms, that's exactly what I think is required, because nobody keeps going with the advice or the tips for very long unless they own them and they feel part of it and they understand it and it's part of a benefit to their lifestyle. They've got to fit it in context with their own needs. So, I mean, this is something I would love to explore, you know, further and perhaps develop, because I think it's, well, that's great. No, it's a very exciting area. And what I'd like to just perhaps finish up with is in terms of perhaps developing something. We had a chat before we started this more formal kind of side of things, just to chat things through. But in terms of healthcare professionals pulling together, some of the areas, because you've delved into lots of communities that perhaps aren't that easy to reach. You've actually found parts of the country who develop Fun Palaces. So how would you say just to finish up, perhaps that link into reaching people more deeply from a healthcare perspective might look?
So our website, funpalaces.co.uk, has a map, and on that map you'll see everywhere that places and people have signed up to make a Fun Palace. There's about 30 at the moment, which frankly, given the state we're in, is astonishing to me. Normally this time of year we might have 50 or 60. We had about 300 or 400 every year. We have no idea what's going to happen this year. There might be 500 5-person Fun Palaces. Quite often there's, 200 that 2,000 people attend, but we have no idea what's going to happen this year. There's also I had a really interesting discussion this morning with the State Library of Queensland in Australia about digital Fun Palaces and some support they can do for that. And we're going to be developing that as the year progresses. So from a perspective of not knowing anything, because no one knows anything right now, if people check our map, they'll see what communities have already signed up, and we can put you in touch then with the lead maker there. You can also choose to sign up yourself, and it's a very simple sign up process, and you're not committed to anything. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, and that's fine, because it's all free. But that means that you then get access to all of our resources. We print posters for communities that want to make Fun Palaces. We have a lot of national and some international comms and marketing, and we'll support that way. But mostly it's sort of registering interest. So the map has become almost a registration of interest. You don't have to know what you're doing when you register. You just have to say, yes, I'm signing up to the Friday or the Saturday or the Sunday, and maybe it's a half day, I don't know, just pick some times, and everything's editable. Once you're on the map, your local community will begin to see that you're there, and we can share you through social media, you can share yourself, and that's when people begin to coalesce, and they often coalesce from quite different parts of community. And that's how we get what you said into communities that you might not necessarily get into. So public health professionals may not necessarily get into some of the communities who always do, I don't know, creativity for mental health. They may not necessarily cross over. Or perhaps the community, so we have a lot of sports people take part in Fun Palaces. And if people are getting into sports because they're just beginning to, they're not necessarily thinking about public health aspects of it there either. And how good it can be for them, mental health as well as physical health. So it's kind of a chicken and egg. Until you sign up, you don't know who's local and who might want to join in. But it is scary to sign up, and we know that. And when you sign up, you get one of the 3 of us in our office, so now 2 days a week, an email from us with our own phone numbers, because we don't have work phones. And you are welcome to have a chat with us, and we'll talk you through next steps or putting you in touch with other people. And I think once people are on the map, they begin to see that they invariably get phone calls or emails from other people near them wanting to take part.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Stella, that has been really great to have a chat and explore these things. And I hope we can talk a bit further on another occasion, perhaps, and develop things further. That's really kind of you. Thank you.